Hello everybody and welcome back to another one of those videos where I talk about Dwarf Fortress. This one's not an update from Toady or Kitfox because I want to talk about two things that I see people asking about a lot. Early access and release dates. Let's get into it. So the first major subject I would like to cover is early access and why Dwarf Fortress won't and shouldn't release into early access and why it is getting a non-early access release on Steam. The first major reason people launch games into early access is for feedback, feature feedback specifically. Currently, Dwarf Fortress is not getting any major feature updates. Now, it's getting a graphical overhaul, it's getting a UX overhaul, but features and mechanics-wise, the Steam version of Dwarf Fortress will be more or less identical to the current release, which is available for free on their website. So mechanically, the game is not changing at all. You can go download the latest release for free, granted it doesn't have the graphics pack, install a graphics pack, install the music pack, which is included within Dwarf Fortress Hack, a popular add-on, and have a very similar-ish experience to what you will get in the Steam version. Granted, it'll be more clunky, it'll take a little bit more learning, but it's there, and you can do it. Making the features reason to release into early access a little bit redundant. The second major reason a lot of studios launch games into early access is for funding. Now, even though Dwarf Fortress is going to be launching onto Steam for funding, this is a little bit redundant because they're currently funded through tips, through their PayPal, which has been running since 2006, and through their Patreon, which has been running very successfully for the past 5 years or so. Now, the final reason why a lot of games launch into early access is for press and feedback. Dwarf Fortress already has that. We're already playing the game. There's tons of feedback through the forum. Dwarf Fortress, as much as many of you would like, is not going to release in early access on Steam and itch.io for these reasons listed above. There's just no reason to. One of the major benefits of launching into early access is for a game that is unknown to the public, that has no press or feedback. They can release into early access, get a small user base going, or a decent-sized user base going in some cases, or even a large user base going in some cases, such as RimWorld or Factorio, games that were relatively unknown and had done decently okay on their own websites, and then when they launched on Steam, it kind of propelled them to a level of fame where they kind of became large games, per se, or large indies. Dwarf Fortress already has that, and it really doesn't gain any actual benefits by releasing into early access. If you release initially outside of early access on Steam and directly into full 1.0 or full release, you will get the biggest possible influx all at once. You get all of those initial purchasers that would purchase in early access, you get all of those people who are just excited to try the game, and people that don't buy early access who will wait until 1.0 regardless of the quality of a game, all at once. This initial influx, this massive influx, will cause a large influx in Steam reviews, push the game to the top of the store, and you will get maximum possible sales. Granted, you might get the same number of sales over a long period of time if you launch into early access, but the maximum number of sales right at initial launch is the best possible outcome for a game like this. Now, the second part of this video, the second thing I really would like to cover is release date. Now, I've talked about this in a couple instances before, and Tarn has basically brushed it off in all interviews, saying, it'll be done when it's done, which is the truth. But I know a few things, and I've talked with a few people, and I have a few ideas. First thing, I would just like to say congratulations to the team over at Kitfox and Toady1 and his brother Zach Trito, that they have managed to get Dwarf Fortress into the top 10 most wishlisted games on Steam, which is kind of insane, actually, if you think about it. It's such a small game, and it's out wishlisting near the sequel to Nier Automata, which was huge, Nier Replicant, which is kind of crazy. And it's up there with many other very, very, very well-known games that are incredibly anticipated, which is really cool. But what I directly want to address with this is release date. Now, from what I've heard through the grapevine, the game's initial release date window was supposed to be November 2020. Now, because it was supposed to release in November 2020, this was when the original trailer went up. So back when the original mock-up trailer went up, which I'll show on screen right here, that was when it was supposed to have that release window. Now, if you realize everything that's happened since 2019 when the trailer went up and current year 2020, it starts to make a little bit of sense why the game got delayed. When the initial trailer went up, we knew that Tarn had to finish the Villains update, which is the version that we're currently playing, which released in February of 2020. Now, Villains isn't complete. It's about 50 to 60% feature complete. There's a bunch of features that are not in the game yet because they are not finished. Tarn has a tendency of getting distracted and just working on things that don't entirely put the game up quickly. And this was the case. He was working on other cool features around the edges of Villains, which ended up pushing the game back a couple months, or the release back a couple of months, which is not that bad. Now, the problem with Villains getting released is it, by default, pushed the Steam version back a little bit. When Tarn started working on the Steam version at the beginning of 2020, about 9 months ago, everything kind of went to hell. The world shut down. 2020 happened. Tarn and Zach also live in a part of the States that got completely flooded out by forest fires for a good long while, to the point where working was almost impossible for about a month, and productivity went way down. What are we waiting on for the Steam release? We are waiting on Tarn to implement art assets and redesign UX for art assets that are already finished. From what I've heard, the Steam version is the Steam version's tile set, the graphics are more or less complete. Mike, Mayday, and Meph have just been working on polished stuff around the edges. From what I can tell from anybody who's talked to me, that version of the game or that portion of the Steam release is finished, or more or less within reason finished, outside of polish. So that to me kind of states that all we're really waiting on now is Tarn implementing stuff. There really isn't any way of speeding this up. It's just a matter of him doing it. And from what we can tell, from what we've seen, from what they've released, I'd say they're about 50 to 60% done. So based on what they've released in my guesswork, and what they said to me initially about that original November release date, plus the initial 3-month pushback, which happened back in February, plus what happened in 2020, my guess is the game will be out sometime mid to late 2021. I would be surprised if it came out in spring 2021, and I would expect it late summer, early fall 2021, which is a pretty fair release date window. One other thing, to those of you who keep commenting that they're delaying it, you can't really delay something that never officially had a release date anyway, so that's kind of a silly thing to say. Just wanted to wish everybody a happy holidays. I am actually recording this on Christmas Eve. If you celebrate, Merry Christmas. If you don't, as I said, happy holidays. Thank you very much for watching these videos, and to everybody who supports me on Patreon and supports these little updates and all of the other various content that I create. Like, if you're supporting me, it's not just for these updates videos. These update videos are a very small part of my workday. The majority of my workday and time is spent streaming and doing all sorts of other events and things. So thank you very much for supporting this work, and I hope to see you over on my Twitch channel, which is my main hustle. This YouTube stuff is kind of a side gig for me. So thank you very much for supporting me over here. If you do, if you support me on Patreon, massive thank you. Happy holidays to everybody out there, and I will see you in the next one.